Hello and welcome to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. I'm Swebb.
And I'm Dad.
And we are the dad and daughter duo talking about all of our favorite sports moments from the week. Dad, it's been a big week. How are you feeling?
I'm doing well, Swebb. I'm doing well. Can't complain.
Can't complain. This is the best that I've felt during an NBA draft week in years. Maybe my whole life.
Why? What happened, Swebb?
A lot of things happened, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But before we do that, let's start with back in the day. Now, this is where we each share a memory from a sports memory from back in the day. Dad, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I remember a Knicks draft, NBA draft. The Knicks had the number one pick, and they do it in the lottery system. And the ticket came out, Knicks get the number one pick. And they draft Patrick Ewing. And it was Dave DeBusschere, who was the general manager at the time, former Knick great. And the Knicks got the number one pick. They drafted Patrick Ewing. And once he developed a little bit and they put a few good players around him, unfortunately, it was only a few good players. And they wound up going to the finals twice with him, but could never get the brass ring.
And that's probably the best player I've seen play for the Knicks during the course of my life for the duration of their career. So that's certainly a good memory. Now, mine dates back to 2015. June 25th, 2015. The Knicks have the number 4 draft pick. We go through the draft. We're thinking this could be a good pick. And the commissioner of the NBA comes up and he says, with the 4th overall pick in the NBA draft, the Knicks have selected Kristaps Porzingis. And I said, huh? Who? What is a Porzingis? And well, Kristaps got the last laugh because he's now an NBA champion playing for the Boston Celtics. But the Kristaps Porzingis era at the Knicks never really panned out the way that you would want it to when you're drafting a player as the 4th pick in the overall draft. So there have been countless memories similar to that. And maybe the Knicks had a lower draft pick and they draft someone like Michael Sweetney and you go, oh, this is not going to be good. This is who we got. And then they have a pick as high as 4 and you go, what on earth is a Porzingis? And so this week I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling better than I felt in 2015. I'm feeling better than I've ever felt my whole entire life during NBA draft week. And that is because the Knicks have done some significant things this past week that we're going to dive into.
Actually, the Porzingis pick wasn't the worst. At least he's turned out to be a good NBA player. And when they traded him, they got some draft picks. One of them turned into Quickly. And then they freed up cap space, which allowed them to sign Julius Randle as a free agent. So that wasn't the worst. Kevin Knox.
Frank Ntilikina.
Yeah. And then if you see the players that were picked after them that they could have had, Frederick Weiss from France. Do you remember that one?
I remember him getting dunked on by Vince Carter in the Olympics.
Right.
At 7 feet tall.
Right. Okay. There were a lot more like that. Plus all the number 1 picks that they traded away and got nothing for.
Of course.
Okay.
And that one stands out because his name was so unique. And it was like, all right, you every once in a while you get these guys from Kentucky or Georgetown or wherever, and they end up not panning out. And it's like, well, at least they came from a big school. You may have seen them a little bit throughout the course of the college season, and you're hopeful. But that one came along, and it was, this guy from Latvia that no one had ever seen play, and you're like, what is going on? And certainly he's panned out the best of many of their picks. You are right about that. And that's why I'm saying he got the last laugh. But that one I distinctly remember because it just, it was part of the endless cycle of the past 20 years or so.
But fortunately, 4 years ago, we got a new GM, and he inherited a team that had won like 17 games the year before. Now look where we are. So take us to where we are now, Swebb.
So now look where we are. Now, the Knicks, as everyone is familiar, finished second in the Eastern Conference during the 2023-2024 season. Unfortunately, they were riddled with injuries towards the end of the season and during the playoffs and got bounced in the second round of the NBA playoffs to the Indiana Pacers. But I think all in all, as fans, we were optimistic because we have a young team. You know, guys like Dante DiVincenzo had a great season. Guys like Deuce McBride really developed over the course of the year. Josh Hart continued to be a spark plug for the Knicks. And so now you're thinking, and we've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks, if the Knicks can sign guys like OG Anunoby, then they're in a good position to have a successful 2024-2025 season. So this past week, news drops that the Knicks have traded with the Brooklyn Nets, which hardly ever happens. But the Knicks get Mikal Bridges in exchange for Bojan Bogdanovic and a number of unprotected first-round picks, second-round picks, you name it. But really, the salaries are about equivalent, except for the fact that the players are not equivalent, right? So the players are drastically different. Mikal Bridges, 27 years old, also from Villanova, has been a star for the Brooklyn Nets, can shoot, can lock down guys defensively. And so as a fan, you're excited. Yes, we're going to be watching Villanova basketball, and I have no complaints about it. Because now you're going to have 4 guys on the roster that all played collegiately at Villanova and won a championship together. And as we've seen this year, the Villanova experiment certainly has worked out, and the team chemistry has been immaculate. So that was just the start of the week. Dad, what are your thoughts on that trade?
I think that was a great trade, and it just goes to show you our general manager is playing three-dimensional chess while everybody else in the league is playing checkers. He was able to pull off that trade because in the middle of last season, he traded a few second-round picks to Detroit for Alec Burks and Bogdanovic. Bogdanovic had like a $18 or $19 million salary for last year and this upcoming season. Then he was able to flip Bogdanovic because he had a big salary for Bridges, who also has like a $22, $24, $25 million salary. If he didn't have that salary to flip, he would not have been able to do that trade because the Knicks are like right at the peak of the cap. So because he had that money to flip, Bogdanovic is what, a 34-year-old player? He was able to flip that and get Bridges. Because he had to, it wasn't just the draft picks. He had to have cap space.
Yeah, so Mikal Bridges is making $21.7 million on the season, and Bogdanovic was at $19 million. So
there you go.
Relatively similar salaries. The other great thing, not only are you getting a young player back that can be on this team for a long time, I also just love the way that the Knicks are moving in silence. Like, you don't know. A lot of these things get leaked, and this was a complete surprise. I know in the past, the Nets and Knicks have never really wanted to do business together. They're two teams in the same city, right? So this is one of those where not only was it a great trade, but I just like the way that they're moving in silence and not letting anything get leaked. But you end up getting these great surprises as a fan, which is fun.
Part of the reason is because Leon Rose, if you notice, he doesn't even talk to the media. He doesn't have press conferences. And a lot of the New York media, as well as some of the people on ESPN, oh, why doesn't he ever talk to the media? For what? So guys can ask him dumb questions? He's sitting in a room with his staff, making deals and doing what he has to do to build a team. The fans could care less. All we do is just wait for something to happen, and now you see it happen. And then you turn on the TV, and the games are there, and you watch the games.
And
we don't have to hear all these interviews back and forth.
Right. And this trade doesn't happen if Bridges doesn't ask for a trade, right? Like, he wanted to come to the Knicks, obviously. He wanted to play with 3 of his former teammates. And I know throughout the course of the season, when the Knicks were playing the Nets, particularly in Brooklyn, and it sounded like a home game for the Knicks, that he was quite defeated in his post-game interview. So, and if you pay attention to Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart's podcast, he was a guest on that, and you could tell, like, he's the one missing out. So now he's in, happy to have him. That means that the Knicks will now have another wing who can defend and can shoot. He shoots about 40% or so from the three-point line. So you have that in tandem with someone like Dante DiVincenzo, who also is shooting over 40% from the three-point line, and Jalen Brunson, who we know can hit shots. And now you have a very dangerous wing.
And these guys all play great defense.
Right. Well, Jalen Brunson doesn't.
Well, not him, but the wings.
He can score, so
right.
And he can facilitate. So that brings us to our next move. The Knicks go ahead and they re-sign OG Anunoby. And he's going to be making some coin. $212 million for 5 years. It's a pretty penny. But it's not the max. And that was a re-signing that we said had to happen. So now if you think about it, this starting lineup for the Knicks has the potential to be Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, and Mitch Robinson. Now talk about not only a unit that can score, but a team that can play defense and lock down players. Between OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, I'm not sure who's going to be scoring on the Knicks. So, Dad, what do you think about this re-signing of OG?
It's a great move, and it's a move that you had to make. They traded away a lot to get him. They had to get him. They had to re-sign him, and he was the key to their team becoming a top-notch team. Because I think he only, in the games that he played, I think they only lost 6 games. Okay, their record was phenomenal in the games that he played. And in January, when Randall was healthy and OG was playing, they lost 2 games that whole month. They were blowing teams away. They beat Denver by 30 points. They beat Philadelphia by 30 points in Philadelphia. They beat some of the top teams in the league, and the games weren't even close. They were just blowing because the defense and the rebounding and the perimeter shooting and the passing. That's why I like those Villanova guys. These guys can all pass. They can all move without the basketball. They are well-rounded players.
And they all play a lot of minutes, which we know is a Tibbs special. He likes to play his roster some serious minutes. But we want to make sure that OG is healthy, one, going into the season, and then throughout the course of the season. But I think with this roster, knowing that, gosh, the oldest player in the rotation is Julius Randle at 29 years old, you've got guys that can maybe split up those minutes a little bit more, right? So now Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, who were in the starting lineup for a lot of the year because of injuries and because of trades of RJ Barrett, now you have these guys coming off the bench and knowing and seeing what they could do when they were playing. Dante DiVincenzo, towards the end of the season in the playoffs, was single-handedly keeping the team in it, scoring 30 points a game. Josh Hart, as we know, undersized but can rebound and pull down 11, 12 rebounds a game and can play endless minutes and can defensively make stops. And so I'd like to see him work on his shot in the offseason so that he can come back and now hit that open three-point shot and not have teams kind of hedge off of him when he has the ball outside. And if he can do that, now you're talking, this is a very, very dangerous lineup.
He said during the season, during the playoffs, he said that's what he was gonna be doing all summer, was working on his perimeter shooting. He said he was gonna be working with J.J. Redick on his perimeter shooting. I hope he got that working already, because J.J. Redick has other things that he's busy with right now.
He's going to have to find a new off-season coach there. But the Knicks, and then you add in Deuce McBride, who came on this season getting more time, getting more confidence. He's only 23 years old. So you've got a serious unit here. The one piece that we're missing, and we don't know what's going to happen in these next couple of weeks, is what's going to happen with Isaiah Hartenstein.
That's a pretty big piece. That's a very important piece. The most the Knicks can give him, because of all the rules, is $72 million for 4 years. Because he played so well last year, there's some teams that have a lot of extra money, and they might throw him $25 million a year. He's never made big money. He only made $8 million the last 2 years. That's all. But just remember, these guys don't play until they're 70, okay? So hopefully he'll take the discount and come and stay with the Knicks, because he worked in so well. I think his wife is a model. New York isn't a bad place for something like that. Hopefully.
$72 million over 4 years isn't too shabby. What is that?
That's not too shabby.
$16 million a year.
But because of the Players Association, these guys are under a lot of pressure to always take the highest offer, so the money keeps going up. That's why these salaries keep getting higher and higher and higher.
It's about 18 million a year. He was making $9 million this past year. So while it might be a discount compared to what the market is saying he is worth right now, it's still double what he was making last year. I know that he loves being part of this team, has a great relationship with the guys on the team. I'm hoping that he leans towards, let me be on the Knicks and be a part of something special. Clearly, the front office is at work, and they've built out a really strong roster. I think the Knicks now have the third best odds to win the NBA championship next season. So you're either coming to the Knicks or you're going to another team where you might not be as successful. The chemistry might not be there. A lot of things can go wrong. And we've talked about this. Do you always go for the highest dollar, or do you go somewhere where you have a chance of winning, making a mark on a city and an organization, and still making great money? It's tough to say. I've never been faced with the challenge of either making $30 million or making 18 to 19 million a year. I wish that I had a seat at that table to have to decide, but he's got a lot of things to weigh here, and hopefully he comes back, because that's the one piece that we need. And I actually would move him into the starting lineup and have Mitch Robinson coming off the bench if they are able to re-sign Hartenstein.
Since you've never had that decision to make, that's where the father knows best philosophy comes in. And father knows best would say, stay where you're happy, take the lesser money, and where the fans love you and everything else. You go someplace else for the bigger money. Now you have a target on your back, and if the team doesn't win, the fans are going to be upset, and they're going to blame you. Look at all this money we just gave this guy. Here, you're not even the highest paid guy.
It's tough to say. I can't really say without knowing which teams are actually making offers and are interested in him. Because if you put those teams and everything down on a piece of paper, that might actually be a little bit more even. Like if it's Dallas or something that's saying, hey, we want to make a play for Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm just throwing out teams, right? Like, that's a team that I would consider taking big money for. If it's a team that tends to be a little bit more of a mess historically, or just doesn't have the right roster, can't get it together, then no, I'm not taking it. So it really depends on which teams are interested for us to really, put our feet into his shoes.
Well, there's only a few teams that have the money. One of them is Oklahoma City. Okay,
and they're a great team.
Right, but then you have to worry about tornadoes, Swebb.
And you have to worry about getting robbed right outside the door of your apartment here in New York City. Let's call a spade a spade. A tornado or fearing for your life taking the subway.
You got me, Swebb.
And let's look at the taxes that, if we want to take it a step further, what are the taxes in Oklahoma on that contract compared to the taxes in New York, okay?
You got me.
If we're all being honest here, we're begging Hartenstein to come back, but if Oklahoma City is also offering him $10 million more a year, am I going to boo the guy if he takes it? No.
But they don't have no frescoes in Oklahoma City.
They have ranches in Oklahoma. That meat, those steaks are probably way better than anything else you could get in New York. He would be fine.
Do you think you get better steaks out there? Do you think the homes are cheaper out there?
The homes are definitely cheaper.
And the taxes are cheaper?
Taxes are cheaper. You're not close to any bodies of water. I don't like being landlocked. I don't like living in a community that has no trees because they're getting blown away every year. But if we're really putting all the facts down, it's not like these are, one's a great offer and one's a terrible offer.
You're right.
All right. So we'll continue to monitor the situation with Isaiah Hartenstein. We hope that he re-signs with the Knicks and gets excited about the Garden being loud and him being a king in New York after they win the NBA championship. Hopefully that is enough to keep him going, but I would completely understand if he decided to sign somewhere else. So we'll see. But let's talk about the draft, because that's how we started with our sports memories. Now, the Knicks going into the night had the 24th and 25th picks as well as the 38th pick. There was a lot of action going on, in silence, really. The Knicks were trading draft picks back and forth with a few different teams. It was hard to even keep track as the evening and as the 2 days were going on, because a lot of that trading of second round picks and first round picks and all of these things allow for the Knicks to make some additional moves. But when it's all said and done, the Knicks draft Pacome Didier, the 25th pick, out of France. He's a 6'8" player out of France. Now, the nice thing about, and I don't know anything about his game, I'll be honest. I'm hoping this is not a Frank Ntilikina situation. If it ends up being a Kristaps Porzingis, that's certainly a better option than some of the past years before this Knicks front office regime. But what I did like is that he grew up a Knicks fan. He posted a picture of him as a kid in Knicks attire. So, Dad, anything to say about this draft pick, this first-round draft pick out of the Knicks?
Okay. He is a very good three-point shooter. He's like 6'8", I believe, 6'6",
Yes.
6'8". And he can handle the ball. He can pass the ball. He's only 18. So what they're going to do is one of three things. Either let him stay with his team. I think he's playing in a team in Germany right now. stay over there, play for a year, develop a little more, or bring him here if he wants to come here, because he says he wants to come to the U.S.
I think there's already been footage of him at the Knicks training facility.
Wow. And he would go play in the G League, and then they could bring him back and forth to the roster, the Knicks roster, if they need him. But they're just going to take no pressure. They don't really need him right now, but they're going to develop him. And the hope is that in a year or two, you have a real stud player. Okay? The guy has a lot of skill, but he's very young and raw. Now, they had the 24th and 25th pick. They picked him with the 25th pick. The 24th pick, they traded and got a bunch of second-round draft picks. The next night, when they were doing round 2, they were able to take some of those second-round draft picks and trade up to get Tyler Kolek. Who's Tyler Kolek? He led college basketball in assists. He's a lefty point guard, 6'3", lefty point guard that shoots about 38%, 40% from three.
All Big East.
In the Big East at Marquette. Tremendous playmaker, can run an offense, and if you watch tape on him, he has similar moves inside the lane as Mr. Brunson does. Just saying. He will, and he's a 4-year college player. Okay, he's not one of these 19-year-old kids that one and done. He's developed. You bring him in, he's going to be able to play some minutes off the bench as a backup point guard right next to McBride. Okay, the two of them will be incredible. This guy's a tremendous passer. He could run the point. McBride can play next to him, and the two of them with heart and the big ragu, they will create a lot of havoc for people.
This was a huge pick for the
This
Knicks
was an incredible
in the
pick.
round.
And this is what I talk about Leon Rose playing three-dimensional chess. Moves he makes one night or a few months prior, he uses that to get something else he wants because he's looking ahead.
Right. And so this is a guy who can be on the team, be a part of the lineup
right away.
This upcoming season, having been a 4-year player in college, he is not a stranger to Madison Square Garden, having played in the Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden every year and really lighting up teams. He's a second-team All-American, and he's someone who's not afraid of the big lights. So you're right. This is where a lot of the movement of picks that you're not normally paying attention to because there isn't always a name associated to those as they're going back and forth between team and different teams. This is now where trading up to get someone like Kolek from Marquette that can be an impact in the second round. Now, Jalen Brunson was a second-round draft pick. So, these second-round draft picks, you don't sleep on them because some great players have come out of the second round of the NBA draft. We are always thinking about those top 10, the lottery picks. But really, some of these guys who play in college for 3-4 years that get drafted in the second round can be legitimate role players for NBA teams. So that's what the Knicks were able to do there. And then they also get Ariel Hukporti and Kevin McCullough Jr. with the 56th pick for McCullough Jr. out of Kansas and Hukporti with the 58th pick out of Germany. Now, these are picks that you can send to the G League and let them develop, see how they play, see if they can make their way into the lineup, see what happens when injuries come, if it's something that, we need guys to kind of step in. But when you look at this roster as a whole, there are going to be some guys competing for spots. But the 1 through 9 or 10, still waiting to see what happens with Isaiah Hartenstein. This is a legitimate team. And as I mentioned, the oldest guy on the team is Julius Randle at 29 years old. The oldest guy within this 1 through 9, 1 through 10 set of players, the guys that will be actually getting minutes.
McCullough is another real good player from Kansas. The only reason why he's another 4-year player, very experienced, very productive, but he got hurt in January, hurt his knee. Okay, and that's why he dropped back in the draft. But this guy is real good. He was Kansas's best player until he got hurt, and they were a top 10 team, top 5 team.
So as I mentioned, I haven't felt this good during an NBA draft week in my whole entire life, people. My whole entire life.
It's amazing what happens when you have the proper leadership and you have a real general manager.
And
Okay?
this is the culmination, too, of a few years of moves, right? As we mentioned, Bogdanovich trading to get draft picks and open up salary to get Mikal Bridges. This is the culmination. And you look at players like Jalen Brunson and Dante DiVincenzo and the contracts that they signed with the Knicks over the past 2 years, and it's virtually a steal when you think about those salaries combined being the same salary as someone like a Bradley Beal in Phoenix or some of these, when you look at the Knicks salaries across the league, the top players on the Knicks don't even scratch like the top 40 players that are being paid in the league. And I think Julius Randle might be the highest paid at like somewhere in the 40s across the league.
Julius Randle's like 30.
No, I'm saying in terms of he ranks like 40th in the league in salary. He's making $30 million. So that's 40 other players that are making more than Julius Randle. And if you think about the fact that the Knicks and the NBA has a salary cap, this is excellent work to get the roster to this point and make all of these moves without having a guy on the team that's making $60, $70 million a year. So the Knicks are going to be a contender. As I mentioned, they're number 3 in odds of winning the NBA championship. Now you still have to see this team play together. Luckily, we've seen 4 of them play together in college. But everything that's been added to the roster is just a bonus. You're not bringing in guys that are completely shaking things up. The Knicks can still be the Knicks that they were this year with these players that are just adding to that and enhancing it. So excellent work by the front office. I'm excited. We'll see what happens, and we'll obviously stay close on the NBA free agency. I'm just glad that, it looks like the Knicks are going to be good for a while, and in the next couple of years, some contracts will start to expire, and you'll have to re-sign guys and figure out how to pay them more of what the market is telling them they're worth. And so we'll see what happens, but this upcoming season is going to be incredible for them.
That's why they're drafting some of these 4-year college players in the second round, and they're loading up on, I think they have 11 second-round picks over the next few years. And they're using some of those picks to draft some guys that they're going to develop while the veteran players that they have are playing and winning. These younger players will be developing, some on the roster, some in the G League. So when a decision has to come up in, say, 3 years, are we going to re-sign Hart? Are we going to re-sign this guy or that guy? They probably won't at that point, but they're going to have they're going to have young players to slide right into those positions that can do what those guys do.
Right.
And that's how you keep the payroll. That's how you keep winning. Some of these teams that are going out like Boston, they just won a championship. Great. Brown makes $62 million. Now they have to give Tatum a contract. He's going to be making that or more. And when you have 2 guys that make that much money, it limits how much you can pay your bench players. The Knicks have, and they're fortunate. They have guys that have cooperated and given them discounts. And OG, even though he is getting $212 million, he was offered more by other teams, and he turned it down to come back to the Knicks, believe it or not. So the Knicks got a discount.
Looking forward to this season. We have a few months before we really have to lock in. Summer League will start July 12th. As I mentioned, the Olympics is also coming up. We're in the middle of baseball season. We've hit a little bit of a lull. the Yankees have. The Mets have, ever since Grimace stepped onto the scene, the Mets have been flying. They're now having concerts performed by players on the roster after games. The vibes are high there at Citi Field. And the Yankees are scuffling a little bit, but we're able to win on Friday night. Dad, in terms of, because this is, candidly, folks, this is going to be our last episode for a few weeks. We might come back in and out, but we're not going to do the weeklies. It's the summer. We've got traveling going on. We've just got other things going on. As I mentioned, I'm going to the Olympics, all of that kind of stuff. So this is going to be it for a little bit of time. Dad, is there anything that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm
summer?
looking forward to you getting us some information from the Olympics, from Paris. Is that trip still on?
That trip is still on. The flights are booked, waiting to see what tickets I was able to get. This past weekend has been really fun, or this past week actually has been really fun. As I mentioned, I was watching the swimming trials last week, and so I'll be able to see some swimming events when I'm in Paris. Track and field has been taking place all week, so I'm going to watch a little bit more of that this weekend. Gymnastics, women's gymnastics, the first round was Friday night. It's a 2-night qualification. Simone Biles is obviously in the lead, but Suni Lee, who was the all-around champion last games, and Jordan Childs, who was on the silver medal winning team from last games, are in the mix. They're second and third right now in the standings. So it looks like the team that might be competing in Paris for the women's gymnastics is going to be the same team that competed in Tokyo in 2021. But I'll definitely be posting. Make sure you are following Dad and Swebb on Instagram and Twitter for any updates. And obviously, as there's big news, we'll do videos from time to time. But before we close things out, Dad, do you want to leave us with a tip of the summer?
A tip of the summer.
If you haven't been running and you haven't been working out, it's too late, folks. That's my tip.
Well, the weather's nice, Swebb. The weather's nice. Yeah. I've talked many times about not giving up on your team, sticking with your team, being as positive as you can, never losing hope. And now you see the Mets. They beat the Yankees twice this week. You see them having concerts by players on the field with fireworks after the game or whatever they had over there last night. And I remember it wasn't more than about 4 weeks ago, even the announcers, and I even made it, I said the announcers are negative. You can't be like this. This is, it was May at the time. You can't act like this. It's 162 games. The season is 6 months long. It's not like it's football where you only have 17 games, and if you lose 3 games in a row, you might as well start trying to figure out, talk about the draft. Baseball's not like that. It's a long season. You can't give up on your team. And hopefully the Met fans see that now.
So stick with your team, which is
you got to do
that you have shared with us time and time again, but we're seeing real-time examples. Mets fans are seeing it now. Knicks fans are even seeing it. Think about all the years that Knicks fans were down and out, and now look. So stick with your team. We'll never get old. And for me, start those workouts in the winter, because by the time summer comes, if you can't fit into those swimming trunks or that swimsuit, it's too late.
Why not just get a bigger swimsuit?
No one wants to be a beached whale while the beaches are packed. You want to look good, you want to look fit, and you want to feel good. It's more about feeling good and feeling strong. That's really why I do it. I do it so that I can feel strong, I can feel healthy, and this summer has been a little bit of a challenge.
Swebb, I feel real good when I have one of these remotes in my hand.
All right. Well, we're going to make sure you get outside this summer. I'm going to be pushing that for you. Everyone,
Ugh.
thanks so much for tuning in this year. This is episode 30. We've had an incredible time. It's been a great season. Tons of things happening in sports and with our teams. It's been fun to share it with you, Dad, and to share it with everyone else that has been tuning in throughout the weeks. Be sure to follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and Twitter. There'll definitely be updates. There'll be some short form content throughout the summer as things happen, maybe while I'm in Paris or when Dad and I are spending time together, when I'm trying to push him to exercise. Make sure you subscribe to Dad and Swebb on YouTube and Rumble for any new videos that come out, and share this episode with friends. Share our channels with friends. We want a bigger community when we get back into the swing of things towards the end of summer and in the fall. But thank you so much for being a part of this journey with us.
So long.
Thank you for tuning into Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, the show where we cover all of our favorite sports moments from the past week. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, and follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X.